Totally of blackcatbooks.org. Author of I the Dragon, Cruel and Beautiful, Rabbit Hole, King Dio, Lauren Frey, Clover, Grimm, and the upcoming Jaw of the Dragon. So, over the past couple of years, we've seen a radical shift when it comes to pretendo narratives. We've seen people fall back in love with franchises they had claimed to be ruined forever. We've seen people back off on the whole Nintendo hardware is doom thing. We've seen e-celebrities rise and fall, narratives change, agendas change, PlayStation, collapse among itself. Like there have been a lot of major changes over the past 10 years, and I'd like to go over all of them in depth. All those that I've noticed. I'm sure there's plenty that like I haven't picked up on, plenty that I've forgotten about, plenty of things I haven't really addressed in a while. Like it's been like how long has it been since I talked about how E3 2015 was a good showing, for example? Like there's not there's no reason to keep bringing that up years and years later, right? Even though I still firmly believe that even after all this time. But one of the things I have noticed, and I think the thing that really needs to be repeated and kind of taken in that like I don't think anyone else has pointed out is that Metroid has gone from being a dead IP to being like a revived one with like two, perhaps three well received entries in the past couple of years, right? Federation Force, Samus Returns, Metroid Dread, and Prime 4. Like, the series seems to be entering a new phase of relevancy, of just getting support and just kind of coming back full force, right? Dread was really well received. I'm a big fan of Samus Returns. I love Federation Force, and Prime 4 is hopefully on par with the originals. Hopefully. It might be bad. We still haven't seen anything from it, but I somehow doubt it, considering the development history of that one. So I I expect that we'll see more Metroid games in the future, and if we don't, we got plenty of good ones, and that's fine. But a couple of years ago, their narrative among Pretendos, one of the most prevalent narratives among the Pretendo community was that like Metroid is dead, it's never coming back, they can't innovate, they can't do anything with it. Look how they disrespected Samus Aran with Federation Force, which is complete nonsense and just people trying to fabricate a narrative, right? Like remember when people tried to pretend that the final boss of Federation Force was like offensive and disrespectful to Metroid's female protagonist? That was something. So that narrative has been killed off pretty thoroughly in the past couple of years or so, since at the very least Samus Returns. And and now in 2022, the transition seems to be that we went from Metroid is dead to Star Fox is dead. Right. We instead of like acknowledging that Nintendo brought back this series that had been kind of dormant for a long time, people have moved on to bitching about a completely different title, a completely different IP with a completely different focus, and complaining about Star Fox, which makes even less sense than Metroid because Star Fox actually did get a glorious return to form in Star Fox Zero. It did get like have a cameo appearance in Starlink. Like Nintendo clearly is invested in the IP. In fact, Star Fox is one of those series that I actually expect to get a major new release on Switch at some point in the future. But right now, the narrative seems to be that, like, yeah, Star Fox is the big dead Nintendo IP that Nintendo has no idea what to do with, and we're never going to see it. We're never going to see another game that evolves the gameplay of this franchise. It's been like a reoccurring thing for Pretendos to act as if the Star Fox IP is inherently outdated and needs to be like changed, right? Like the amount of people, casuals who don't understand the gameplay loop of Star Fox titles, like the good rail shooters, is incredible. Like you really do get the impression that these people don't like the IP. They focus more on like the characters and like the lore and the story when like that's not really what Star Fox was ever about. And their narratives don't make a whole lot of sense, right? For example, like the claim that Star Fox Zero is a remake of 64, like it's the exact same game. Not true in any way, shape, or form. Like they're completely different games. The fact that so many people present that narrative as if it's absolute fact is laughable. Like it's just it simply isn't true. They're completely different games. But right now that's kind of where we're at, where people are just trying to present a narrative in regards to this specific Nintendo IP. And I wonder how long it's going to last. I really don't think it's going to last as long as the Metroid thing. The Metroid thing lasted for like a solid decade. From like, honestly, the roots of it had probably been formed way back in 2004 with people who were upset with the change of direction in Metroid Prime 2 or even the original Metroid Prime. There were plenty of people who came out and said that like Prime wasn't real Metroid back in the day, right? And now we've moved on since then to just damage controlling everything. I knew people who like told me that Prime 3 wasn't any good, which was a load of crap. Like Other M was controversial. Like I myself don't like Other M. Like what I I don't I wasn't I wasn't thrilled about the Metroid agenda back in the day. Like, much like Zelda, Metroid was kind of attacked for being like the hardcore Nintendo franchise that Xbox and PlayStation fans needed to destroy in order to pretend that Nintendo couldn't compete with the mature video game consoles. So it's interesting to see like after all this time, this 15-year long saga, or even longer, like the Metroid narrative die, and I'm kind of curious how it's going to come about for Star Fox, because I think the Star Fox narrative is a lot less entrenched in gaming culture. I think it's a lot less mainstream. It's mostly just a bunch of furries and just degenerates and people just desperate to make content criticizing Nintendo talking about it. I don't see I don't see the narrative going on nearly as long. My prediction, my official stance is that one major Star Fox release will flip the entire thing around, and people will completely forget that Star Fox was ever a dead IP.